好的，各位台湾这个金融科技协会的朋友，大家好，应该算晚安。我现在人在美国东岸 Boston 跟你们连线。那我从1月开始来到这里，担任这个哈佛大学甘乃迪学院的访问学者，那已经差不多半年的时间了。那暑假的时候有回台湾，但可能没有机会跟各位一一见到面，但今天在线上跟各位见面非常的开心。那我在甘乃迪学院主要研究是半导体跟地缘政治。那当然，我过去一直非常关注的区块链跟加密货币，也是我在研究的一个重点。那我们今天呢，非常荣幸跟这个台湾区块链大联盟还有金融科技协会共同来合办今天的讲座。那我们也邀请到一位在业界相当有名，而且是做一个目前在虚拟货币非常重要的一个工作，就是所谓的反洗钱，还有做很多非法交易的调查，背后使用的科技以及如何跟政府合作。那今天这位讲者他的背景非常的特殊哈，那他是过去是担任美国联邦政府的检察官，专门在 FBI 调查相关的洗钱还有恐怖主义相关的一个工作。这份工作他做了10多年。那我跟他认识的时候，其实非常有趣，是聊到说，他怎么会从一个做联邦政府法官、检察官的这样一个身份呢，转到做新创，尤其在投入这个 crypto 相关比较不是一个已经是成熟的一个产业。那他跟我说，其实他很希望透过自己在过去政府的经验，可以协助这个产业走向更正规，而且是跟法规还有法遵上面能够更符合政府的这个需求这样子。那我觉得非常的感动哦，所以今天就特别邀请他过来。那也希望借由等等的分享，大家可以知道说，在这个虚拟货币的这个产业里面，其实不只是大家看到的炒币啊，或者是 DeFi 啊这些相关的快速赚大钱的方式，其实还有一群人非常努力而且默默的在做技术上面的一个开发，而且是在后端上面去针对各种可能产生的洗钱，还有一些不正当交易行为做一些调查。所以他这个等一下分享的 case， 我想是非常的这个精彩。那也请大家拭目以待。他跟各位也说明一下，等等的也分享呢，会先由我跟这个我们的讲者Ari Redbord 进行一个对谈，然后最后的30分钟会开放给现场的听众。那如果各位有兴趣有提问的话，欢迎写在这个Zoom 上面的一个聊天室，或者是直接举手问，这样也可以。好，那在我们正式进入今天的讲座之前呢，我们非常荣幸的邀请到过去我在立法院的时候也是相当支持我，然后也是我跟他合作非常愉快的一位前辈，我们的法务部政务次长陈明堂陈次长今天真的非常荣幸尤其是台湾时间现在已经是晚上8点半的时候了，他刚刚跟他连线，好像他还在办公室，他可以来帮我们做个致个词，然后开场。那我跟陈次长其实渊源也算蛮深的啦。就当我一任当立委的时候，刚进去，无论是这个同婚专法的修法，还有跟这个议题相关的洗钱防治法这一个第5条修正案，我想这个是非常重要，而且是具时代意义的一个法律修正案，就是我们把虚拟通货，就是所谓的加密货币纳入洗钱防治。那这个也算是创举啦，因为在好像当时各国的法律里面还没有 还没有把这个虚拟货币或者是虚拟通货纳入的，台湾算是第一个。那也因为这样子，我们在其他国家，甚至于是这个 FATF， 就是这个国际洗钱防治组织上面，我们都有不错的一个声量，然后也跟他们有蛮不错的一个交流这样子。那所以今天非常的开心能够邀请到陈次长来帮我们这个词开场。那我简单用英文欢迎一下Ari， 然后也邀请一下陈次长帮我们这个词。Good evening, friends in Taiwan and those watching online, whatever you are. I'm Jason Xu. I'm Vice Chair of Taiwan FinTech Association, former legislator, currently the Senior Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School. It is with great pleasure today to invite my good friend, Ari Redbord, Head of Legal and Government Affairs at TRM Labs, to join our monthly Fireside Chat with the Taiwan FinTech Association. Today's event is in collaboration with the Taiwan Blockchain Alliance. So I wanted to shout out to our former NDC Minister, Chen Meilin Jie, for supporting this event as well. And it is also with great pleasure that we have the honor to invite Dr. Chen Ming-Tang, who is the current Deputy Minister of Department of Justice, to give us an opening remark. Deputy Minister Chen has been a great ally when I was in the Legislative Yuan, supporting various legislative acts and proposals that I initiated, including same-sex marriage law, and most importantly, anti-money laundering law. Together with his support, we amended Article 5 of anti-money laundering law to incorporate VASP, virtual assets exchange providers or the cryptocurrencies into the anti-money laundering law. So we are very pleased and honored to have him join us today to give us a remark. So over to you, Deputy Minister Chen. 陈次长，现在是不是请你帮我们做个开场？谢谢。
好，谢谢许务理事长，我们的 Speaker Ari Redbord， 各位线上的朋友们，大家晚安。今天我本来是报名来参加担任听众的，是要听听大家对这一方面这个的指教。那也非常感谢台湾金融科技协会，还有台湾区块链大联盟他所举办的这个增加新知识的机会。各位也知道说，反洗钱的工作，我们在2019年在这个 APG 第三轮评鉴是通过，可是在这个之前，为了修改洗钱防治法，在2017年前后，那各位知道说，我们现在的洗钱防治法就分得比较细致，是有金融业跟非金融事业人员，其中刚才议员有提到的，说我们的加密货币，当时算是新的这个行业出来，文字要怎么调？所以各位知道说，我们刚才讲了洗钱防治第5条，虚拟通货平台及交易事业这个名词呢，确实是经过很多次的讨论以后，在许议员立委的办公室，我们做初步的敲定的。所以呢，许副理事长呢，对于我们的洗钱防治呢是非常的热心参与，而且呢提供很多意见。那各位知道说，币圈有传说币圈1日人间10年，也就是说呢，虚拟货币还有其他虚拟资产，在 FinTech 去年呢是改成叫虚拟资产这一块呢，在资讯爆炸的这个时代里面呢，是非常急速的发展。那由于呢，它相关的规则在全世界里面呢，还没有定出一个很理想的这个定义出来，所以呢是在逐步的发展中。那台湾的洗钱防治呢，包括我们各位大家都知道的，虚拟货币不是货币，它不是实体货币，它也不是将来可能大家在研发中的这个叫做数位货币。由于虚拟货币呢去中心化，造成呢它在我们的资讯圈衍生出来的很多 这个新兴的这个工作出来啊，比方说前半年 NFT 和虚拟货币的暴起暴跌，在世界的这个金融业里面呢，造成这个很大的冲击。到底它是不是诈骗？到底它是不是属于洗钱的工具？等等呢，都造成了很多我们业界的朋友，包括我们一般的使用者，都非常的感到迷失，感到非常的这个shock。所以呢，在 FinTech 在2021年10月份发布了虚拟资产与虚拟货币服务提供者，就是 VASP 的最新指引，其中呢也提到说，要求各国必须让 VASP 的 travel rules， 就是这个呢规则呢，能够提出一个日出的条款，这个就有赖我们各个业界来做。各位也知道说，我们现在的虚拟货币在洗钱防治的部分呢，行政院是指定了金管会作为洗钱防治的主管机关，洗钱防治方面，但是呢业务面到目前呢，我们还没有定出一个业务的监理机关。像这些呢，政府都在努力的处理中希望呢能够在有关于这个 travel rule， 我们能够根据我们这个办法的第7条，能够来正式的实施它的日出条款，能够尽早的来实施。这个呢就有赖于我们整体性，大家我们线上的朋友们，还有我们包括我们金融科技协会，还有我们台湾区块链大联盟等等的前辈先进们共同的来努力。那我也引用美国前任大法官联邦大法官Joseph Brandy， 他说没有法律，社会就没办法存在。那法律呢是社会的连结，制定法律、维护法律和促进社会连结是公民社会的本质所在。那希望呢我们协会还有艺人，你在美国还有我们的讲者各方面呢都能够大家互相的努力，包括我们线上的朋友们，大家共同来努力发展对于台湾的有关于虚拟货币还有反洗钱的工作等等这些呢能够制造一个良善的这个公民社会的地带也不要变成无法可管的灰色地带，让我们的社会能够更加发展，让我们的金融科技呢包括今天我们叫 FinTech Talk 的这里面呢，能够让我们的深圳的金融业呢也能够更加蓬勃发展，正向的考量。那祝大家身体健康，精神愉快，中秋节快乐，谢谢。
好的，谢谢陈次长非常感谢你的这个支持。那 again， 谢谢你在这个晚上这么晚时间，在中秋节前夕特别帮我们来做这样子一个非常重要的一个支持好，那我想就今天正式进行到我们的讲座的分享的部分。So it is with a great pleasure. Let me introduce you everyone to my dear friend and also my I should say partner in crime. This is a good metaphor to sort of what he's doing and also his vision in this field. My friend Ari Redbord. So let me before he starts, let me give a short description of Ari's background. He's currently the head of legal and government affairs at TRM Labs. TRM is a company that delivers cryptocurrency fraud detection and anti-money laundering solutions to financial institutions and government worldwide. Ari brings a wealth of regulatory compliance and enforcement experiences to assist TRM and its clients with issues related to cryptocurrency, anti-money laundering, and compliance. Prior to joining TRM Labs, Ari served as a U.S. Department of the Treasury as a senior advisor to Deputy Secretary and Undersecretary of Terrorism and Financial Intelligence. In that capacity, Ari worked with the teams of Financial Crime Enforcement Network, FinTech, Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, and other Treasury and intelligence components on the issues related to cryptocurrency, sanctions, and the bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering strategies. So he has over 11 years as the working in the U.S. federal government. So it is amazing that he make such an important transition to join the startup world and to tackle these very important issues that this industry is facing. So Ari, welcome.
Hey, Jason, thank you so much. It's an incredible pleasure to join the Taiwan FinTech and blockchain community, and really equally exciting to join you today. You are a star in this field and someone I've admired for some time, and really looking forward to the conversation.
Fantastic. So let us begin by sharing a little bit about your story. I know I read it just now. Share it to the audience about your background, but I wanted to hear from you, like what make you jump from a regulator down to a startup, and tell us a little bit about your background and how you end up where you are now, and what sort of what's driving you. Yeah, thank you.
No. Thank you so much. It's nice of you to answer to ask the question. I as you mentioned, I spent about 11 years at the U.S. Department of Justice, where I was a prosecutor working on really that intersection of money laundering and national security, what we call threat finance. And I prosecuted cases involving sanctions. I prosecuted cases involving export control and terrorist financing. I then spent about 2 years at the U.S. Treasury Department, again, working on those same types of issues: illicit finance, sanctions, money laundering, really stopping bad actors from taking advantage of the financial system. And then sort of looking around to see what's next. And this is what, it's great to talk to this group, because you uniquely know that this is a community of builders and innovators and people who are really working together to build a new financial system. And when I realized that there was an opportunity in sort of this startup world to go help build a safer financial system, I really jumped at the opportunity. And I often say I've been very lucky to have some of the coolest law jobs, jobs for a lawyer that you could ever have. I think I have the coolest one now with TRM, because I really get to work in a space with folks like those on this call to really build something. And as we all sort of build this new financial system, I think we all uniquely understand how important it is to keep it safe, and that's what we do at TRM. Jason, I think you're on mute. Yep.
Yeah. So that's amazing. Thank you, Ari, for sharing a little bit about your journey. And tell us a little bit about TRM. And I think a lot of people in Taiwan, or especially in that part of the world, has still very little knowledge about the technology behind the Chen crypto analysis and intelligence, and what exactly does TRM do and why it is important.
Yeah, no. Thank you so much. So as Jason mentioned, we are a blockchain intelligence company, and what that means is really we work with sort of three main verticals. We work with public sector, so we work very closely with financial crime investigators globally, and they use TRM really as a tracing tool to track and trace the flow of illicit funds. So if there's a ransomware attack or a hack, law enforcement or financial crime investigators use TRM to follow the flow of funds in cryptocurrency. It's a software tool. Then similarly, we work with really globally some of the world's largest financial institutions that are just thinking about how to engage with cryptocurrency, and they use us as anti-money laundering for crypto. So they're using us to monitor transactions. They're screening wallet addresses to make sure that they're not transacting with illicit actors. And then finally, we've seen this extraordinary explosion, right, of crypto businesses globally, particularly in APAC. And we work with really the largest sort of crypto businesses, exchanges, brokers, custodians. And again, we're an anti-money laundering solution for them. They're using us to monitor transactions, to screen wallet addresses, to really ensure that when you're engaging with an actor within the crypto space, that you're engaging safely, that you're not engaging with a terrorist financier or a sanctioned entity. and that's very much so. Those are sort of the three main folks. But at the end of the day, we're a software tool that's anti-money laundering for crypto.
Yeah, and obviously you're tackling one of the most important issues, and probably one of the most difficult and challenging issues in today's crypto industry. I couldn't help but notice that recently the Tornado Cash and the role that TIM played in help with the sanctions or develop solutions to stop from illegal transactions. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with this event, and what are some of the developments in what is happened right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Happy to. And look, one of the reasons that financial institutions, that cryptocurrency businesses, and when I talk about crypto businesses, right, it's everything from sort of the world's largest exchanges to, small DeFi startups and NFT marketplaces and issuers. So it's really, it runs the spectrum in terms of clients. And all of those clients have sort of different compliance needs and different compliance capabilities. But one of the things we do is we screen for sanctions. So financial institutions and crypto businesses use TRM to ensure that they are not transacting with either a sanctioned address, so an address that, let's say, belongs to North Korea's Lazarus Group, or in this case, sort of Tornado Cash, which is a decentralized mixing service on Ethereum. And really, what TRM does is screens addresses to make sure that financial institution or crypto businesses is not transacting with a sanctioned entity. And if they are, then that business, the exchange or the DeFi protocol, can decide what to do with that information. Does it want to block the address, or does it want to sort of allow the funds to go through? And that's very much what happened with Tornado Cash. The interesting thing about Tornado Cash, which makes it a little bit different, or actually very different, is that's really the first truly decentralized protocol that has been sanctioned globally. And what happened here is there were a lot of regular users who were also ensnared in all of this because they all of a sudden had sanctions exposure. And we've been working with crypto businesses, centralized and decentralized, to ensure that regular users are not sort of caught up in what was really intended to be sanctions against essentially the entity itself, Tornado Cash.
And this all sounds really reasonable to me, but Ari, tell me, how difficult is your job? Because I know this is not something that's you can do in the, I guess, out there, sort of in public and broadcasting. And I mean, you're doing a lot of things in the background. And just tell us a little bit about how you work with government agencies in terms of educating them about the importance of this issue, and exactly how what sort of I guess the gap or this disconnect there might be with the sanctions, and also the ability for the government to grasp the fast pace of the technology. So tell us a little bit about, in sort of details, how you approach, investigate a case. And I know I've seen some flow charts, but kind of walk us through if you have seen a malicious or illegal transaction. How do you do it? And do you do it on a massive scale? You have software that are able to decipher those illegal behavior, or you tackle case by case? How do you do it?
Yeah, that is a great question, and I think sort of like there's a lot there to unpack. But I guess I'll start with this: is that like really globally, we see really almost every regulator, every law enforcement entity trying, working on how should we be either regulating or enforcing, prosecuting cases involving cryptocurrency. And as you know, Jason, I mean, it is such a new and fast moving space. We talk about crypto never sleeps. I don't think you and I sleep either these days, just keeping up with sort of the pace of the space. And that means that governments also are working to keep up with the pace. One thing that's interesting that we hear all the time about sort of crypto crime, or the reality is that crypto is just being used more and more. As that financial system grows, crypto inevitably is going to be used more and more in the commission of all kinds of different crimes, right? There's no crypto crime. Crypto is just like any other currency, but it will be used more and more. And that's why it's so important. And one thing we really focus on at TRM is training for financial institutions, but also for law enforcement, to have the training that they need to sort of investigate these cases. So digging in a little bit sort of beyond that, look, we're a software company, so we provide a software tool to law enforcement who uses that tool to investigate fraud and financial crime. And what we are able to do is say, hey, look, this address on the blockchain is associated with some sort of illicit activity. We do not associate those addresses with individuals, right? We associate them with some level of illicit activity or a connection to an exchange or some other type of information. And then law enforcement will use our software to trace and track the flow of funds. So, as an example, there was a ransomware attack on a important pipeline in the United States over a year or so ago called Colonial Pipeline. And there was a ransom payment made to get the data back. And ultimately, law enforcement used tools like TRM to trace and track the flow of funds to an address that law enforcement was ultimately able to seize back those funds. We're again a software tracing tool or anti-money laundering tool. We don't seize back funds, but what we allow is for great financial crime investigators to use our tool to track and trace the flow of funds. A really interesting example, and I encourage people to read about it because it's also a very colorful case. In 2016, what was at the time the largest crypto hack occurred involving Bitfinex, the exchange. And the hackers stole about $70 million in Bitcoin and essentially laundered those funds on blockchains for about the next 4 or 5 years. Ultimately, under a year ago, several months ago, the IRS criminal investigations and the FBI working with global law enforcement was able to seize back what was now about $4.2 billion in cryptocurrency. It was the largest seizure of anything in US history. And what allowed for that was really years of following the money, using tools like TRM to trace and track those funds. And, it all sounds very complicated at times, but really so many of the typologies are things we've seen in traditional finance before. It's moving funds in smaller amounts. It's moving between different blockchains. It's moving through these mixing services, like I mentioned Tornado Cash earlier as an example of a mixing service. So, I say all that to say, what's so interesting is there's this narrative that I'm sure many of you hear all the time being in this space that, crypto is anonymous, that crypto is good for money laundering. And the reality is really it's not true. The nature of the blockchain, right? The open ledger where crypto lives and moves actually allows for more visibility on financial flows than we've ever had before. And what that means is financial crime investigators have more ability to follow the money than they've ever had before. And we see that happening more and more and building great cases. And that's what we enable at TRM.
Well, that's a very detailed description. And I think, just from, obviously you only probably talk a little bit about the complexity involved. And it's such an important issue to solve, Ari. And let's move to talk a little bit about DeFi. And I read in an article that has quote by you, Ari, and I wanted just to give our audience a little bit of background why DeFi is uniquely vulnerable to hacking. So in the first 3 months of 2022, hackers stole $1.3 billion from exchanges, platform, and private entities. And the victim were disproportionately in DeFi, with 97% of all crypto stolen in that period from the DeFi protocols. And this figure represents a huge jump from 72% in 2021 and 30% in 2020 stolen from DeFi platforms. And this is a quote by Ari Redbord. So the FBI's reference to the complexity of cross-chain functionality and open source nature of DeFi platforms is the key. In order to investigate crypto-related cybercrime today, it is critical to have a cross-chain tracing capability, as more and more bad actors target DeFi, bridges, and more funds across blockchains. And cross-chain tracing is the key component of investigating. And obviously, and I end quote, obviously the most important issue here is the cross-chain, and tells how complex is this to work on a case like that, and where do you see DeFi evolving? And obviously, with kind of a bear market right now in crypto, if people are correcting and the prices are correcting, but still, I think DeFi will have its place in the future, and I think a lot of people will still start to use it. So tell us a little bit about what you mean, especially when you refer to cross-chain platform tracing and all that stuff, and how would DeFi platforms or even exchanges react to this? Would they be resistant or push back on this, since it's revealing their data? So tell us a little bit about this complexity.
It's a great question. Look, I think we all, for those of us who have been doing this for a while, I know a lot of you have. You think about, there was a time where Bitcoin was synonymous with cryptocurrency. When you talked about Bitcoin, you were talking about crypto and vice versa. But I think over the last, really few years now, we've seen this explosion of different assets and really this explosion of blockchains. So what we are also seeing is, illicit actors moving funds rapidly between blockchains in order to obfuscate transactions. And when there's a hack of a DeFi protocol or really anything else, what we're seeing is illicit actors move those funds between assets and between blockchains. And I think that's why more and more, when you are investigating these types of incidents, it's so important to have tools software that also moves quickly between blockchains in order to follow the money. And I think traditionally, these sort of early blockchain analytics tools were just, their data architecture was entirely on Bitcoin, and then ultimately entirely on Ethereum. And at TRM, we were very intentional about building a tool that had a cross-chain engine, a cross-chain capability, because that's where we see things headed, sort of this proliferation of blockchains and more movement between blockchains. In terms of DeFi, why this is particularly important is in these recent DeFi hacks, we've seen a lot of movement between assets and between blockchains. Is DeFi particularly vulnerable? I think there's probably a couple reasons why we're seeing attacks on DeFi in particular. One, I think the nature of a decentralized entity or a decentralized exchange is you may not have, the cybersecurity controls in place that a more central, more maybe mature, project has. You also might not have the resources, quite frankly, right? Companies large, whether it's retail or tech, for years have been building out their cybersecurity, right? And this is not as much a crypto issue as it becomes a cybersecurity issue, because in order to stop the hacks from happening in the first place, you really have to build those cyber controls. And a lot of the smaller or really even just early DeFi projects, they've been building software. They've been sort of, onboarding users. They have not necessarily been thinking about sort of cybersecurity. And I think that's one of the reasons we've seen these attacks on businesses. In our space, we talk about, and I know so many of you do this, and we have to, we feel like we're building the plane while we're flying it. And I think that's a very good thing, because we're building quickly, but it becomes a very bad thing in terms of cybersecurity. And I think that we're seeing that play out a little bit in the space right now. But in terms of the cross-chain question, there are just, I think the reality is that law enforcement or investigators need tools to sort of mirror the conduct of the illicit actors, and that's really sort of that need sort of for cross-chain capability today. One last thing I would sort of add to maybe the last few questions, Jason, is I talk a lot about sort of the national security threats, whether it involves North Korea or other sort of countries that are sort of involved in some of this activity. But you even take the national security implications out for a moment, and you're people that really care deeply for sort of the crypto economy. I think the reality is we have to stop these hacks from happening in order for the crypto economy to really grow and flourish. We see all of these attacks on cryptocurrency exchanges, DeFi protocols, NFT projects, right? All this fraud in NFTs. The reality is, people aren't going to want to put their money into crypto, into DeFi, into NFTs if they believe that it's going to be hacked or stolen. And we have to stop the money laundering in order to stop these hacks. So I say all of that because, we come at it from a perspective of someone who really believes in the future of the crypto economy. And our job is to sort of make it safer, to stop bad actors from taking advantage of it so it can really flourish.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I coming from a legislative background and also working on this field, I feel like this is a last mile, and so important and to address. And also, I think, coming from the standpoint of Asia, where a lot of crypto trading activities, are happening. And I think Asia account for nearly 70% of all the trading, crypto trading. I think TIM will have a very important role to play in this, especially in engaging with the community and as well as the regulators, government agencies, and then to share your best practice and experiences. And from there, Ari shares with us a little bit about your company's current developments and whether you have a plan. I know you have a plan to probably do more in Asia, and tell us a little bit about that. And I know people listening in online are mostly FinTech and crypto blockchain practitioners and industry leaders in Taiwan. And tell us a little about how they can engage and work with TIM Labs.
No, I really appreciate that question. I will say it's funny you mentioned sort of we're the last mile. Sometimes I think we're the last mile. Sometimes I think we're in the first inning. I can't decide in this space. I just know it's moving so quickly. But yeah, no, look, in terms of APAC in Asia, look, as you mentioned, it has become a incredibly important place for digital assets. At TRM, it's actually so interesting. I joined TRM about 2 years ago. After about 15 years in the federal government, we were about 9 people. We're about 160 today across 17 countries. So we've seen really, really rapid growth. And as we've grown, we have grown really intentionally our presence in APAC. We have data scientists and engineers. We have a robust business development sales team, and really sort of growing our presence in the region as the company grows globally. It's become a really important place. And as you all know, it's become an incredibly important place, as you mentioned, sort of for crypto businesses. We've seen, really APAC become a hub for crypto businesses, both those that have natively grown in APAC and those that globally that have expanded there. We have seen some of the most important regulators in the world develop in APAC. So what we've been doing is really building out the team throughout APAC to service our growing client base there. And that includes exchanges that are, or crypto businesses really writ large, that are both global, but also sort of native to APAC. And then we support, as many of you know, some of the largest, the key regulators, tax authorities, financial crime investigators, and really are going to continue to build out that presence to be able to support that. We are, at TRM, we're really a global company first. We're fully remote. We have people, as I mentioned, absolutely everywhere, and we're building hubs globally. And a real focus of building right now is a significant hub in APAC. And I will say that, like, when you look around the world, the real key here is really thoughtful regulation that doesn't stifle innovation. Because I think that the crypto community, the crypto industry, is looking for clarity from regulators, but also not sort of over-regulating in a way that stifles innovation. And we're seeing that in APAC today. And I think that's why TRM is finding opportunities to work with so many entities in the region.
Jason， 你没有开麦克风。
I just muted myself. Yeah, I was just saying that I know Ari and Patrick, you're both going to Token 2049 in Singapore, and some of our FinTech Association communities members will be there too. So tell us, you're going to be there for how long?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic,
Yeah.
Jason. I'm really excited to hear that. Yeah, no, look, I'm Ari, ARI, at trmlabs.com. Please feel free to reach out, and we will have a booth at Token 2049. I'm speaking on a panel involving regulatory issues, and really would love to meet, engage, and yeah, really looking forward to being there in really just a few weeks. Looking forward to it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. So I think we have about 18 minutes or so left. I still have so many more questions to ask, but I wanted to open the floor to the audience. Okay, I have a couple of questions here from the audience. First of all, Ari, what do you think about the U.S. regulation and also the legislations? And a few months ago, back in June, there was a legislative proposal by Cynthia Lamas, by the senator of Wyoming, and you also refer to the tornado cash as the tornado cash sanction as the watershed moment for the industry. So give us an update or a run through about the U.S. regulatory landscape right now, and also what are the bills that are being discussed in the Congress right now?
Yeah, it's a really terrific question, and you're absolutely right. The sort of Lummis-Gillibrand bill, which was a bipartisan bill that really would create the first comprehensive framework for digital assets in the United States. Interestingly, as you know, having asked that question, the European Union reached an agreement this summer on MiCA, which is the Market in Crypto Assets Act, which really is just that, the first comprehensive framework globally for crypto. But we certainly don't have that yet today in the United States. I think the Lummis-Gillibrand bill is as close as we are, and I will say that I think we're probably pretty far from having anything like that actually move through Congress anytime soon. As you know, the U.S. is going to have elections, midterm elections in November, and very little happens legislatively before that. If there is one area where I think we may see more movement in the U.S., it's on stablecoins. As you know, and this is true in APAC. MAS in Singapore has come out with some pretty strong statements about stablecoins. I think we've seen general consensus, actually, even between industry and policymakers globally, certainly in the U.S., that we don't see very often. And that is the need for a reserve requirement of some kind for stablecoin issuers in the wake of the collapse of Terra. So I think that, like, if there's any area where we may see some movement over the next few months, it is stablecoins. But I am not holding my breath for sort of really comprehensive cryptocurrency legislation out of the U.S. Congress really anytime soon. Just sort of building on that a little bit. One thing that's really interesting in the space that we're talking about today, financial crime, money laundering. It's interesting. It's the one area where there actually is some regulatory clarity today in the U.S. We talk about, is something a security? Is it a commodity? How should it be regulated? The one place where there is more clarity is from the U.S. Treasury on money laundering. What FinCEN, which is the Financial Intelligence Unit of the United States, says is that if you are a cryptocurrency business, if you are what FATF calls a VASP, the Financial Action Task Force, you're an exchange, you're a broker, you're a custodian, then you're essentially a money service business, which means you have to have compliance controls in place. You have to have a transaction monitoring solution like TRM. You have to have policies and procedures. So there is really you have to have a license, file reports with your regulator. So it's really the one area where there is a lot more clarity today. Crypto businesses know their obligations. The one exception to that, and this sort of goes to your other part of your question, is in DeFi. The question is, if something is truly decentralized, if it's just software that's on a blockchain, similar to Tornado Cash, then it may not have the same compliance obligations. But one thing that's important to remember is sanctions is different than anti-money laundering. What sanctions is really is it's strict liability. If you are a U.S. person or a U.S. entity, you cannot transact with an entity or an address on the OFAC, on the Treasury sanctions list. And I think that's what we're now seeing here in the crypto space is different crypto businesses from small DeFi protocols all the way to large exchanges figuring out how to comply with sanctions against a decentralized exchange. And that's really why I called it a watershed, because it is this moment where we're having this discussion about security versus privacy on blockchains. And it'll be interesting to play out. I think ultimately the place it needs to get to, where we need to go, is we need to ensure that North Korea or illicit actors are not engaging with these platforms. They're not using them for money laundering. But at the same time, we have to make sure that regular users have some privacy, right, to transact in a more and more open financial system. And that's, I think, the fine line that regulators and the crypto industry are trying to walk together. And that's what we're watching play out in real time.
Mm-hmm. So building on that, thank you. So building on that, just a follow-up question. You mentioned about North Korea. What about Russia and Ukraine? And I know there's been a very controversial, obviously, through crypto, Ukraine is able to receive financial support in exchange and donations to things, but also people accused of exchanges used by the Russian oligarchs to transfer their own assets. So tell us a little bit about what you know in this space, and share us what you can. But obviously some of them are secrets. But please give us some ideas.
Yeah, no, another great question, Jason. So look, when Russia invaded Ukraine, there was this narrative of, well, could Russia use cryptocurrency to evade sanctions? And I think the answer is clearly no. You can't run a G20 economy on cryptocurrency overnight. I mean, the entire market cap of crypto, isn't enough for what it would take for Russia to truly evade sanctions at scale, right? To replace, central bank sanctions, sanctions against their top 10 banks, the oil industry, right? So, to your question, Russia, the Kremlin, Putin is not going to be able to use crypto to evade sanctions, but we are inevitably going to see Russian oligarchs attempt to use cryptocurrency because they used anything that moves outside the traditional financial system. I have investigated sanctions investigations involving, bulk cash smuggling and networks of shell companies and high value art to evade sanctions. And Russian oligarchs will use crypto in very much the same ways. So I think the key becomes compliance, and the large exchanges where so much of the liquidity exists today in crypto mostly have really strong compliance controls. They use TRM. They have compliance officers, right? They have the controls in place to screen for sanctions. I think where it gets a little bit more dangerous is in this sort of network of non-compliant exchanges. And these are the places, though, we've also seen as the targets of, the Treasury Department, and other regulators globally. So if you actually look and you talk about the use of sanctions by the U.S. government has sanctioned 3 crypto exchanges. all of them have been non-compliant Russia-based exchanges, one called Suex, one called Garantex, one called Chatex. And these sanctions were intended to cut off the ability of essentially Russian actors to launder the proceeds of illicit activity, including sanctions. So I say that, like, you know, it's really an interesting dynamic. I don't know that we've seen a significant sort of uptick in activity in this way based on sort of Russia sanctions. We could, but I think we're sort of all monitoring it very, very closely.
Yeah, indeed, and I think as we move forward, we'll pay closer attention to this. Let me see if there's any more questions coming from our audience. Okay, we have a couple of requests that they are interested in talking with you. Maybe have TRM Labs advise their business. These are the banks from Taiwan. So I'd love to connect with you offline when after the talk. Yeah.
That would be fantastic. Yep.
And I see there's one more coming in. Okay, this is from Roy Chen. In addition to the data on blockchain, what kind of data sources does this TRM refer to when tracking illegal assets and illegal addresses?
That's a great question. So interestingly, so we have a number of different teams within TRM, and we have sort of threat hunters who are out there looking for information related to blockchain addresses. For example, sort of the way we create attribution, and attribution is sort of the labels on those addresses, whether it's terrorist financing or hacked or stolen funds. And what we do is we take that raw blockchain data, right? You talk about the blockchain information. We take that raw blockchain data and we layer it with threat intelligence. So what we are doing is we're taking sort of real world entities, real world information, and labeling blockchain addresses. So for example, if you see Lazarus Group hack the Ronin blockchain, we take the address that was the perpetrator of that hack and we label it hacked or stolen funds. We also label it Lazarus Group. And now we also label it sanctions because that address was sanctioned by OFAC for having hacked the Ronin blockchain. So we take that data from sort of off-chain data and we layer it onto the blockchain. And that's really sort of how we create our secret sauce, if you will, sort of our data. So that's kind of how we do it. You know, inevitably, financial crime investigators and compliance officers at financial institutions, they use our tool to do on-chain investigations, but they marry that information up with off-chain information. So for example, you know, as I said, we don't associate an alphanumeric address with Roy Chen or Ari Redbord, right? We associate it with some type of behavior. But ultimately, a financial crime investigator is able to trace and track that address or those funds to a cryptocurrency exchange that actually may have information, you know your customer information. And that's when law enforcement will serve a subpoena or other type of legal process in order to get the information that it needs on that individual. So it's really like, we're entirely on chain in terms of the way we operate our investigative tool, although we have off-chain data on there as well. But it's one tool in a toolbox that financial crime investigators use in the crypto space.
Well, thank you so much, Ari. We've come to almost nearing the end of our today's session. So I just wanted to share our appreciation and our community's appreciation to you, Ari, for give us such a wonderful sharing. And I also want to thank the Deputy Minister, Minister Chen Ming-Tang of Department of Justice of Taiwan government to give us an opening remark. And we look forward to seeing you in Asia, and look forward to having you come to Taiwan and to meet all of us.
I'm so
And
looking forward to it, Jason. And look, you've been a champion in this space for so long, and it's really an honor to have a conversation like this with you. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for everyone on the line for spending time with us today.
对，好，那谢谢今天各位参与的这个线上的朋友们，那我们也谢谢 TIM Labs 的 Ari Redbord 谢谢他这个这么早起床，也谢谢这个陈明堂次长，我们这个金融科技协会的这个每个月的炉边小聚我们下次再见。Thank you, Ari. I'll see you around next time, and let's chat. Okay, somewhat. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thanks.
Welcome to Taiwan. Okay.